combine with it products like chemical compounds, chemical,
Yes.
general things about chemistry. So that is the reason that I joined this webinar.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. And I see, yes, and you have a law firm. Okay, this sounds great because actually business planning always depends on the kind of business model, right? So what we always see is just like, for example, when you're working like Stefanos with chemical compounds, so you have physical products you need to ship and deliver. You have to produce them. That works quite differently than, for example, like a law firm or a consulting business. And so basically, as so when we, I can just like give you a quick overview of what I want to do because.
Sorry, Niels,
yes?
we also have here in the chat, Ana Maria say that yes, I have a law firm. Maria del Carmen Blanco says, have another comment. I have worked on a Canvas business model. There are,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And basically, you can read as well.
Yes, yes. This was I would like to get into the chat in a minute because the big question is always like what are the steps and what should the financial model do for you? But we get a little bit ahead of ourselves. So the first step, as Maria, as you mentioned in the chat, is you have to lay out like the basic plain concept of any business when you want to start one. So most people start with a business model canvas. And what you start with is like, okay, you lay down like, what is the infrastructure I need? Where do I can actually generate revenue from? For example, when you go to like the business model canvas, where you are like, okay, where do I can do marketing, for example? And so the business model canvas is always like the great overview. And when you want to get a step ahead, you need actually to work with some basic concepts for generating a business plan. So I see we have different stages here today. So I hope that for everyone is something in here. We will start with some basics. Some basic concepts we like to use, and maybe I actually have quite a new view or a new approach on the generating a business plan. And in the next step, we will get into the financial model, which is actually a spreadsheet. And in this third step, I would like to give you the opportunity to fool around with it, submit, to get into it, and to do some practice. And of course, we can do a lot of Q&A in the end of the workshop. So basically, yes, you find, as mentioned in the chat, you find templates online, and you can actually find a lot of paid templates, and they can get really, really complicated. We see always some of these templates out there with which are consisting of a lot of spreadsheets, going from like the profile of the company up to the planning of investment rounds. So you always have to find out, okay, which template is actually suitable for me. And it's quite actually a good idea to spend some money on these templates, because oftentimes you get a really good template which is actually fitting your kind of business model. For example, when you have a software as a service business or a consulting business, there are templates out there. But you have to be able to read them, and you have to be able to wrap your head around the concepts which are actually in there. So basically, what we will do is we will first go into the basic concepts, and then we will head to the financial model. We have the break at 12, so my plan is to get over the basic concepts and give you guys an idea how we approach this topic. And after the lunch break, we will get into the financial model and the Q&A. Hopefully, everyone is fine with that plan. And yeah, of course. So I would say let's dig in, and yeah. As mentioned, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to use the chat or raise your virtual hand. So The first question founders always ask us is, do I need an MBA for this stuff? The question is actually, do I need to have a theoretical background in economics, or do I need someone who is actually doing economics? And I can say, yes, it's always good to have someone around who actually is more used to this stuff. But basically, I can say, no, you don't need an MBA. It's because it's actually quite interesting. The whole financial planning part of creating a business and a business plan is not exactly rocket science. What we see is, especially founders with an academic background, be it something like chemistry or for example, what we do often is we work with founders in the space of IT and cybersecurity. They're used to a very scientific approach on these things, and they often discover like, okay, but how am I supposed to fill out this financial plan because I don't know stuff? How do I actually get to know this? Because I need valid information. And here's the tricky part, because a business and creating a business is actually based on assumptions. So you have to be able to make assumptions, which is actually something we as people with academic background are used to, but this has to translate into the financial planning. So we work with assumptions, and these assumptions make lay down the base for the whole financial model. And if you are having a hard time working with such a template because there are a lot of numbers and things and concepts to work with, I can tell you, for myself, I don't have an MBA. I don't have financial background in the first place. Actually, when I started my first company in 2014, I made a lot of mistakes by financial planning, right? Because I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So in 2016, where I founded my second company, it was quite better. So it's always a part of practice. But what I actually was missing was like the concept and the approach, how to understand what I'm actually doing, because it's more than throwing some numbers into an Excel spreadsheet. And this is where I would like to start with you today. So the concept to plan with. So what should an effective model actually cover? The first thing and the most important thing is the whole spending on advertisement, growth, marketing, and sales. We will have especially a look on this part because this is what drives a business, right? So you can't just like create a product or create a prototype and wait for customers to come. We all know we have to do some things to actually we have to spend money, time, and effort to actually get clients. The second thing is you have to assume what could be the revenue generated from this. And after that, when you say like, okay, when we make some sales, what are the costs associated with generating revenue? And the fourth question is this combination working? So what we see most of the time is that people or founders are approaching their financial planning by starting at the personnel part. So, for example, like my co-founders and me, we need a salary, we need people working for us, and this is where all starts, because these are costs you actually can assume quite easily, right? So when you want to have, for example, like an employee for marketing and sales, they need a salary, so you can actually research this and you know this. But this oftentimes leads to the point that we actually do the second step before the first. And so the first step is always looking out for how is actually the business working, and all businesses work by generating revenue. Revenue is not actually just like flowing in. You have to do something for that, right? So you have to talk to people, you have to spend time and effort. This is the core of your business. So we always want to start with that. And to achieve that, we have to take a different approach to a business model. Because imagine it like this, and we will look deeper into that. If you generate revenue, this is actually something which is, and this is the second point here, revenue generated from sales activities, for example, is always connected with further costs, because now you have a client. So they bought the product, right? So for example, you have the first client, and let's say we all together do a consulting business. And so we have a client. So now we have to spend time actually doing the consulting work, right? And we have to spend money on the whole infrastructure we need, because we need to travel, or we need some basic material like licenses for something like Microsoft Teams, for example. So we always start at the generating revenue part, and then we look at what does it actually cost to actually maintain this kind of revenue stream. And then we have the part where we can actually look at how is this combination working. So when you are doing a financial plan, and most of the time founders come to us and say like, oh, we want to talk to an investor, we need a financial plan, or we have we can apply for a scientific grant, we need a financial plan. And so most of the times financial plans are actually generated for one purpose only: to convince one person, one jury, one project partner to actually doing business with you. On the other hand, you as founders or as head of projects, you will need a financial plan to actually see, is this actually working what we are doing? So there are two main things a financial plan should do for you. The first thing is you should analyze your business with this. So for example, like I spend every month about 2 or 3 days working on our financial model to get the new numbers in. For example, like what was the revenue we generated this month? What was our ad spending? How much customer success we were doing? So what's happening, and how does this translate to the projections of the upcoming months? Because I, as a CEO, I need to be in control of this, because otherwise I might make costly mistakes. And especially in the early days of a company, costly mistakes often lead to big and huge problems, because what every company lacks in the first years is time and money, right? So to cover that, I would like to introduce you to the driver model. So to play it out very basic in the first thing, we separate each and everything which happens in a business in 3 categories. We have the so-called drainers, we have the sustainers, and we have the drivers. So what do I mean by that? For example, like drainers are all expenses associated with your business which do not actually which do not generate further revenue or anything else. So for example, you have to pay taxes, you have to pay fees, you have legal costs. For example, when you have to create contracts, when you fund a company, these are all costs which are actually flowing out of the company every year. Or when you have a loan, a business loan, you have to pay interest, right? So these are costs associated with the business who actually have to be covered, but they are not in that case productive. With a productive, I mean paying taxes. I mean, like for society, it's good because we all need to pay taxes, right? But for the business itself, it's just like money which goes away, which has to be earned in the first place. So the drainers are quite simple. The sustainers are those costs associated with a business which are necessary to actually keep the whole operation going. So I'll give you some example. For example, the personnel. Most of personnel are actually sustainers. Imagine a company where you have like a couple of employees and you have one person which is working in accounting. Accounting is very important, right? You have to pay, you have to deliver the paychecks, you have to work on the whole account, you have to prepare everything, you have to keep this whole operation running by knowing what the business is doing, which is actually the work of accountants. Or you have support. When you nowadays, when you reach out to a company and you want to talk to someone on the support hotline, this person actually's job is to keep you as customers as happy as possible, that you actually stay customers. So these are examples for personnel, for employees who are actually working on sustaining the whole operation. The next thing is all things associated with software you need, or with software you need to operate the business, which can actually reach from you need something like Microsoft Office licenses for every employee, you need like an accounting software, you need, for example, cloud space, and so on and so on. This actually can accumulate in a lot of cost, because especially things for software for marketing or sales can come in quite costly. For example, when you have a CRM like HubSpot or Salesforce, which are all costs who are not generating revenue directly, but to be able to actually work with your customers, you need this kind of software. And nowadays, every business is adding more and more software right now. So, for example, like chatbots, is special tools for creating new website, testing landing pages, and so on and so on. So we have a huge list. And one of the most important topics and tasks you will have when you want to run your own business is to ask yourself, okay, what is the software stack actually which I need to maintain the operation? What is very useful to us? Of course, this also covers hardware. This is every hardware you need inside the supply chain. For example, if you produce something, you need hardware to produce it, or you selling a hardware product where you have to buy in components and stuff. So everything in soft and hardware are actually sustainers, because they are necessary to sustain the business operating. And so also, for example, like infrastructure, you need office space, you need laptops and stuff. And here you can see when you look from the perspective, maybe you start a small advertisement agency. You will find that, okay, we can work from home. We need a laptop. We need some software. We are actually running on very cheap costs, which is actually not that big of a thing, right? But when you are producing something and you have to build up a whole supply chain, for example, all the suppliers you actually have to pay are important to sustain the business. And so this always depends on the business case, right? So to keep that in mind when we look at the financial model later on, and when we go to the Q&A, we can actually go into specific questions you might have to your business plan, because to cover all and every possible business model here would actually spend a lot of time on, and we won't be able to cover every alternative scenario. So now we come to the most important part, which is the drivers, which are, and to keep it simple, we have two main drivers for every business, which is sales and marketing. So when you look at the approach to many founders actually do is like, okay, we know what we need, we know we have to employ people, and now we have to make enough revenue to actually cover the costs. And this is something like the other way around, you know what I mean? Because in the first place, you want to generate sales, and you can actually do this by employing sales employees, or you're doing sales yourself, which is in the first couple of months always the recommended procedure. So you have to go out and you have to figure out, how do we actually land a sale with our customer? And maybe your business model is not so much depending on sales, but on marketing. But in most times, these two things work together quite neat. So you need both of them. So, but a marketing spend is always an investment as well as sales. So these are the areas within your business where you can actually put money in and you get money out. And this is where the magic happens, so to speak, because only if you spend on marketing and sales, you will be able to generate revenue. So this is how we structure this. So we always start with the drivers, then we go on with the sustainers, and then we cover all the drainers, for example, like what on taxes, fees, and other stuff. So when you look at this slide, you always start from the right part and then you go all the way to the left. Any questions you have up to this point, maybe? Okay. I would say silence in this case is good. Okay, then we move on, and I would like to show you how this actually plays out. Let's say we will actually, we have a company and we spend some money on marketing. Let's say we do an ad campaign or something. This, in the best case, will bring us in some leads. So people actually interested in buying our product. What happens next? So maybe when you look in detail, we have an ad campaign and people, for example, like click on the link, they go to our website and they give us the email address for further information. So we have to work with that, right? So the marketing spend actually led to some interest in our product, and now we have to close the deals. So what happens next is the sales team will actually take over. So the sales team is contacting the leads, qualifying them, talking to them, offering some kind of deal, and either the way is the customers are actually not interested, and so we will lose the customer. So we always have some losses, but some people actually interested will actually buy our product and pay for what we offer. So we have a win. Yay! This is the point where actually revenue comes in. Yeah. So I mean, like, this is a basic process. You might actually know it, but so the revenue we have to generate, we generated from that, is actually there to, first of all, cover our costs. We have to pay the sales team, we have to pay the marketing team. So one of the main questions is like, how do we actually close the gap between our costs and our spendings on marketing? And this is something a financial model can only answer so much. So, for example, like when we go to the example, like we have a law firm, so we actually doing business in this kind. So we actually can go out ourselves, we can talk to people, we can gain the first clients from that. So we can put in some work to actually get the first customers. And after we gain some customers and everything is running up, we can actually employ people, we can do marketing, then we have the funds to actually spend money on marketing and sales. When you have a more complex product, for example, we want to create a software or we have to create a product, we need some money beforehand, right? Because we have to develop the product, we have to do some research and development, and then we can go out and actually try to sell. And this is actually why investing in startups is actually such an interesting thing, because you look at a startup and you're like, okay, is this team able, with money I give the startup, to actually spend money on marketing and sales? This is the main focus point for most investors out there, because if I give you money and you put the money to good work and we generate revenue from that, we actually can get this machine going. So therefore, startups who actually are working on getting clients or working on their marketing strategy are actually more likely to get funding from investors, because they actually can see how the operation is functioning. You know what I mean? Because if you don't know, will this work? If it ever works, we don't know. Maybe the product is good, but what's the plan for marketing and sales? And this is actually something, Stefano, you mentioned this in your, you mentioned this earlier. The question is always like, okay, how do we cover sales and marketing in our financial planning? And because this is such an important part of the business, it's always like you have to be specific. You will see in the spreadsheet I actually created for you for today is like we will go into different kinds of marketing channels, so you can differentiate. You always have to measure. So especially in marketing, it's quite easy, you know, because you actually can spend money on an ad campaign and you see how many leads will actually be generated from that. So you can actually measure how successful was that. It's a little bit more difficult when you employ someone who is doing sales, because this person will get paid every month, and you don't know how long will it take to close a sale, how long are the so-called sales cycles, so how long do we need to actually get a client. To give you an example, last year we worked with a startup here in Germany, and they were selling a software to big insurance companies. And so the problem was, actually, they had some money in the bank from investors, but they had the problem that they did not know how fast can we actually go out and get customers. So how fast can we convince these insurance companies to buy our product? And the estimation was that they will need 6 to 8 months for insurance company from the first touch point to actually signed contract. 6 to 8 months was their estimation. In reality, we actually needed 12 to 18 months to actually close one deal with one insurance company, which is actually a lot more time. So the time doubled. So the problem was they actually raised money with the estimation of we need 6 to 8 months. So the whole company was funded and was well financed for about like 8 or 10 months with the whole operation team. But the longer it took to actually get the insurance companies to sign a contract, yeah, I mean, like they burned money on the way, right? So the whole operation was in jeopardy. And what we did is actually the story was playing out quite well, because we came in, we helped the sales team, and we did some extra work, and we made a deal with them. So they actually were able to sell to insurance companies to keep the boat afloat. But this is actually one of the main issues and problems you have to be aware of, like how long does it take? And therefore, it's so important. I cannot stress this enough. The first 10 sales should be every time the responsibility of the founders, because only then you will know what to expect, which assumptions will actually work, and you don't have to rely on new employees closing deals for you, which can actually be very risky. So every time one comes onto the company who's actually doing sales, they need a lot of stuff, right? So they need presentations, pitch decks, one-pagers, they need guidelines, how to approach customers, and so on and so on. So this is always a lot of work, and as long as we as founders put in this work, we can actually cut down the costs to actually keep this whole thing running. The moment when you have the cost and there's spare money to spend, because we make more revenue than we actually spend on operation costs, we are at the so-called break-even point. This is where we actually can spend additional money on marketing, on sales, or on employees who actually help us to keep customers attached. Okay. So what are the main points? The main point is you have to spend money to earn some. We oftentimes see that in financial models, predictions are made like, okay, we get two more customers every month. So, but the question is always, where do they come from? Just like they don't come along, knock at your door and like, hey, I heard you have a startup, let's give you some money for your product. So you have to spend at least time and resources to actually earn money. And in most cases, when you have your own company, when you have to do both, you have to develop the product and you have to do sales, right? So this is always a tricky part, where to focus on in which part of the entrepreneurial journey. The second thing is, when you have actually revenue and when you have customers, you have to spend to maintain these customers. We oftentimes see startups who are actually very good at finding new customers. Every month, they actually are very, very good in acquiring new customers. But on the other hand, they actually lose customers because they did not spend enough money on customer success, means support. Who's actually answering the emails if a customer has questions? How much time will this actually take? And so you have to always be aware of that you find the right spot. How many people do I have to employ to maintain the customers? It could be that one employee can be able to cover 100 customers. But it could also be that one employee covers 10 customers, which is actually depending on your business case and the money you make with one product and how intensive you have to care for your customers. In most parts, when you look at, for example, like apps like Netflix, for example, I mean, like, has anyone here ever wrote an email to the Netflix support? Well, seems not the case, right? because it's very easy and it's functioning. So they actually put a lot of effort in that to get the app or the software running at very, very low maintenance. On the other hand, you might have products which actually require some effort, especially when you go to the business to business and when you have like production lines and stuff. They need to be maintained, right? So in this case, you see like the amount you have to spend on customer success, on support and stuff can differ very, very frequently. So the bottom line is, you have to spend quality money to gain revenue and do not hunt revenue for covering costs, which might seem a little bit obvious, but in practice, it's actually very important to keep that in mind. So you spend money to gain revenue, and you want to make this a regular spend, and not like trying to get more customers because you employed some people because you had money at one point. So financial planning is always begins at how to spend money on gaining revenue. Okay, so up to this point, do you have any questions up to this part? Yes, thank you. Basil was running. No, okay. This is good because now let's head forward and to actually get into some concepts which are associated with financial planning. So back to the basic concepts. I mean, like, there are, when you go into financial planning, you will stumble upon a lot of different metrics you actually can work with. Like, you have these all of these different concepts like customer acquisition costs and what are the KPIs. So when you hear people in the startup space talking about business planning, this can actually sound like from a whole nother world, when they're talking about how the rule of 40 applied to the CAC and the customer lifetime value increased about 3%, additioning to the margin of 4 to 5%, which is actually good in the last quarter. Then you're like, okay, what are these people actually talking about? And this is where many people are like, okay, do I need an MBA for this stuff? Because I did not get a single word these people were talking on. So you can actually work your way through this, because many of these concepts are actually quite simple to grasp. So I picked some for you, ranging from very simple to the most important things you actually have to cover. So actually, maybe every one of you knows this. When we have revenue and we cover the cost with this, everything left in our bag is profit. So I mean, this is the most basic economic principle you can actually have. Yeah. So the revenue minus the cost equals profit, which is actually good. But this actually is very easy when you, for example, have a store. Yeah. When you buy in some goods and you sell these goods to people, you know, like, okay, I bought 100 items, I sold 100 items, I make some money. This is actually the most simple part of a business. In most business cases, these things get more and more complicated, because many businesses are not only like selling one item at a time and one time, but we want to get into business models like, for example, like a subscription model and stuff. So things get more complicated the more we get into the details. So when you are self-employed and you trade things on Amazon, for example, this is actually the basic thing which is most important to you. Like, what is the profit I make? And and then you can actually go ahead and say, look, okay, I can look at not only the revenue in total, but I can look like, okay, what do I make from one sale from one product? And then I actually cut the costs from the product to actually acquire it or build it, yeah. And then I have to actually look into the customer acquisition cost. So the second row here is the margin. The margin is actually the money you make from one product sold. So let's make a quick example. Let's say we want to sell pencils online. We have to buy these pencils, right? So we have product costs. Let's say we sell these things on Amazon. So every pencil sold is actually revenue for us. And the product costs are the costs associated with actually building this pen, acquiring this pen, shipping the pen, and so on and so on. And on the other hand, we actually can't just like buy pens. We have to assume we need to do something to actually make people aware of our product, of our pens, right? So what we do is we spend money on so-called customer acquisition costs, or in short, CAC. The customer acquisition cost is the number for each and every customer we have to spend to acquire them. So you could say, like, when we spend, for example, like 100 euros for acquiring customers, and we get 10 customers with that, the customer acquisition cost will be 10 euros per customer. So simple as that. And when we actually look into the product revenue, we actually minus the product cost, minus the customer acquisition cost, we get the margin. For example, like when we sell this pen for 1 euro, but we have to spend 60 cents on each pen for product cost and customer acquisition, we have a margin of 40 cents or 40%, which is actually a quite good margin for a pen. I would assume in mass production, the margin for a pen is about like maybe 7 or 8%. And this actually differs from the kind of business you are doing. This is why software is actually so beloved by investors, because you build the software once and you can sell this to an infinite amount of people, right? So because everyone here can use Netflix without us getting a shipped product. So they actually build the software. They have to spend money on servers and stuff, but this scales way, way better than the pen, because for each and every customer, we have to acquire one pen to be able to be shipped to this customer. And this leads to whole other margins in this kind of business model. So, for example, in the last year, investors were looking for margins in the software space which go around 70 to 90%. So software is actually a business of very, very good margins. And the last thing I want to cover is the so-called customer lifetime value, because we actually see that investors asked startups about their customer lifetime value, which is actually quite odd to see this in a dialogue, because founders who actually barely maybe have 5 customers right now, and this like 4 weeks we have acquired 5 customers, and now I get asked about our customer lifetime value. I'm like, okay, what should this be? So you can look at the revenue generated with one customer. So what does one customer pay us for acquiring the product? And then you can assume like, okay, how long does the person actually use the product? As you could see, like when Netflix was actually going into business and they were spreading all across the globe, everyone was heading on to getting Netflix. And then something very interesting happened. Disney Plus, Hulu, I don't know, HBO Max. So a lot of other video streaming platforms for series and movies were actually entering the market. And people tended to add new subscriptions. And in the Corona crisis, people actually were more aware of the money they spent. So Netflix had a significant drop in their subscription model. And so they had to rethink about their customer lifetime value, because let's say the average customer is using Netflix for about, like, let's say a year, like 12 months. You do the subscription, and after 1 year, on average, you cancel the subscription. So this is actually the customer lifetime. So you have to assume like how long do actually our customers use our product. And this does not only apply to Netflix and subscription models, but also to industry solutions. Like, how long is the lifetime of our product? When do actually our customers need to buy a new one, or when will there be a new product which actually can be deployed? It's the same for every business. And if you do consulting, the customer lifetime could actually be like, how long does our project actually last? How many appointments do I have? When I do, for example, like something like when I'm a lawyer and I have to have a client on the case, how long actually are these cases lasting? Are we talking days? Are we talking weeks? Are we talking months? So this is something which is very important, because the customer lifetime value gives you a hint on how frequently you need to acquire new customers. So the customer lifetime value is basically the revenue. Years. Yes, it can be years when you're doing when you are your lawyer. Yes, of course, it can take quite long. So the need of acquiring new customers is maybe not that high because you have long-running projects. So basically, what we do is we look at what do we actually make from a customer by month. So I would break it down month by month. How much money do we actually get from our customer paid every month? And if they pay, for example, like a yearly fee, or if they pay us our spend, it doesn't matter. We can actually break it down to how much money do we make from one customer every month, and how long is the time span they are actually our customers. For example, like when we make $100 of one customer and we know they will stay 1 year, we have a customer lifetime value of actually 1,200 euros, right? Because we can actually just like multiply these numbers and we get the result. This is the customer lifetime value. Back to the question. Yeah, this is actually a good question, because for long life products, this is actually was a question because of the car industry. In the car industry, this actually can work as well. So two things here. The first thing is if you buy a car and you actually pay for the car, and the margin for the producer is actually not that high because a car comes with many additional costs for shipping the product and stuff. The automotive industry actually makes some money on maintaining the car, you know, like you have to go to the workshop every now and then, you have to switch tires, you have to, I don't know, check the brakes, switch the oil and all this stuff. These additional services actually make a huge chunk of money for the automotive industry and also for the car producers themselves, which is actually very interesting because it's changing right now because we are heading into electric vehicle industry. And here you can see like many car producers are actually switching their business model to adding subscription models. For example, like, oh, you have an electric car, you need to actually subscribe to the service, for example, for the battery. Actually, last year, BMW had a brilliant idea. Maybe brilliant, I don't know. We will see how it plays out. So every BMW, for example, comes with heated seats. So every model in BMW is actually able to warm yourself when you're sitting in the seat. So this product is built in the car, but you have to do a subscription model to actually unlock the heated seats. So they actually are switching to a subscription model for additional services and additional features in your car, which are actually built in the car. So you buy the car and there are heated seats, but you cannot use them unless you do the subscription model. And this is exactly, and the customer lifetime value is actually the exact reason why they actually did it. Because they want to, because the margins are getting thinner and thinner because everything getting more expensive, right? So the car parts, the supply chain, the transport and stuff. So the margin for one sold car is actually thinning. And so to make enough money, they actually want to try out new, they're actually trying to do new things on subscription models. And yes, I completely agree with you. We are heading into an era where everything might be able to come with a subscription model, which is quite interesting because this is a whole nother topic regarding ownership. So do you own the car when you subscribe to that? Do you own your dishwasher when you have a dishwasher subscription by IKEA? I don't know. So we will see how this plays out. But actually, in long life products, to come back to the question, is it's a bit more difficult. So for example, in industry, when you are selling, for example, a machine, you're actually making contracts on maintaining the machine, for example. And this is where additional money is made. So everybody is like, okay, when you sell a product into an industry, make sure that you have some kind of service contract, which actually gives you a monthly or annual revenue, because this is money where you can plan on. I don't want to go too deep into that, but I think this question is very, very good, and let's double click on that. If you are able to do something like a subscription model, the advantage is that you can plan better with your monthly revenue. So basically, when you're looking at, when I sell one car, maybe a high price car, and I'm always depending on selling new cars, and it's very hard to estimate how much cars do we actually can sell. But if every car comes with a subscription model, we actually can say, okay, maybe our customers driving this car for about 2 or 3 years, which is actually not that high, but especially here in Germany, people tend to buy new cars frequently. So this is actually a thing here. So they sell the car and buy a new one. So they actually can calculate very well, if we put a subscription model on that, every sold car will give us about 2 or 3 years of additional revenue we can calculate with. And so the customer lifetime value is actually better to be calculated, which makes it easier to make business predictions. And on the other hand, subscriptions are tending to get more expensive than buying a product. For example, like Netflix is a very good example. Like when you are busy and you did not use your Netflix account, for example, for a couple of months, you actually pay for this every month. So, and they actually do not have to deliver something because you're not logged in, right? So many subscription models actually calculate with our lack of focus to actually cancel and renew subscriptions. And therefore, as you can bet, our services on the internet will actually manage your subscription. What do you have to do is subscribe to this service which manages your subscription. So yeah, we are definitely heading into an era with a lot of subscription models. But yeah, these are 3 basic concepts I wanted to talk about, like profit margin and customer lifetime value. And within these concepts, one I want to double click on is the customer acquisition costs, because customer acquisition costs are one of the most important metrics you actually can measure. How much time and money, how much resources do you actually need to spend on acquiring one customer? Okay, next up, we will get into one of the more maybe complicated ones, and these are the unit economics. When you are actually planning, when you're doing your financial planning, and you, for example, like when you talk to an investor, they will most likely ask you about your unit economics. And so I want to explain what are unit economics and how do we actually get into calculating what unit economics are, and how do we actually fit this in our financial planning. So first of all, we have to define what is actually a unit, and a unit is the smallest unit within the business model. For example, when you're doing consulting, you could be able to be like, okay, 1 hour of my time or 1 hour of any consultant's time is the smallest unit we can actually have. This is the smallest package we actually sell. This could also be one sold product, like our pen. This could be 1 unit because we won't be able to sell half a pen, and so this is the smallest unit we have. Maybe we have bundles in our shop, like 100 pens for a special discount, but the 1 pen is the smallest unit we can come up with within our business model by selling pens, or 1 subscription in case, for example, of Netflix. So we have to define what is the smallest unit we actually sell, one time or on a regular basis. And then we look into what does it cost us to sell 1 product. And this can actually be very tricky, because if you are selling physical products, for example, like in IoT, when you have a combination of hardware and software, you will need to cover costs for integration. So someone has to go to the client and they have to pull in the plug, and they have to get the hardware running. They have to install the software. They have to teach people how to use the product, and so on and so on. So everything regarding integration, production, supply chain, etc., these are the costs for product. And although actually when you have a consulting business and you are not selling a high scalable product because it's always depending on your time, you actually make up for it because the cost of your product is limited, because you only need yourself, maybe some fine clothes, and you need a laptop, and you can start actually working on that. So the unit and the cost for product are the first 2 things. And the third thing, and you can see here, it's called CAC, so our customer acquisition costs. How much will it cost to acquire 1 customer? So for example, in how long are the sales cycles? How long do we actually need to work on 1 customer until they sign the contract, which can be a very short period of time or a very long period of time. if you, for example, sell to insurance companies, which is really, really a long time. And I cannot stretch this enough. How much meetings did we have with people inside the insurance companies? Because there were so many people who had a say in what will we do, what is the project, what's the product budget, and all the different departments having their hands in the cookie jar of our project. It was very, very time consuming. The other things are like marketing spend or other forms of advertisement. For example, if you going to a convention or an event, and if you spend money on a booth there and you want to attract people with that, this actually costs money, right? So you have to be aware of all these costs, and you have to accumulate them in marketing, sales, and so on. And then you have the true customer acquisition cost. And when you put these all together, the smallest unit, the cost for the smallest unit, and the acquisition cost for the smallest unit, you get to the so-called unit economics, which is basically the answer to the question of how much money do we make with each unit within our business model. So later on, when we are heading into our spreadsheet, you need to define the product, and you need to be aware of how do I actually define one unit, because it's always easier to define a unit, because if you're doing, for example, like projects, you're selling some hardware, for example, like chemical compounds, then you are doing some consulting alongside with that. So in the first couple of years, every business is actually doing anything to earn money, right? Because you need this money, and you need customers, and you need to learn. So you need to talk to them. So you need to work with them. And maybe you stumble upon problems you haven't assumed. So you need to spend more time, and you want to make a living out of that. So one of the most important topics for your financial planning is defining these units. And from there, you can actually calculate the unit economics. Do you guys ever heard? So you can use the reactions. Give me a thumbs up if you ever heard about the fuck up nights. Okay. So not everyone. Okay. So what are fuck up nights? Fuck up nights are events from entrepreneurs to other entrepreneurs. And you would see on these fuck up nights, you would see people on stage who failed with their business. So they actually tell people on stage what they did wrong. So what they fucked up, so-called. So they actually explaining like what went wrong, how did it come to that they had to close shop and close the business. And what is very interesting is that so there are frequent fuck up nights all over Europe, I guess. So you can actually Google and you can have a look if there's a fuck up night near you, which is actually quite entertaining. And you learn a lot from that, because people are willing on stage to share insights with you why their business failed, which is actually more helpful than all the success stories you will see, because success stories always come with this confirmation bias, the survivorship bias, like, oh, they did it this way, so this should be the way to do. But fuck up nights actually have the advantage of, you see the other side of the medal, all the startups, all the companies who actually did not make it. And I've been to quite a few fuck up nights, and not yet on stage, but I have been to fuck up nights myself. And what is very interesting is that most of the I can wait a second, I can type it. It's you can just like Google it. It's just like you can Google it with the city you are in or you live in, and you might find some. This actually the first fuck up nights were held in Mexico, I think, when I'm not misinformed, and now it's spread all over the world. You will see that, so it's very interesting. So back to the point. So many founders I saw on stage are like, oh, we actually fucked up because we miscalculated our unit economics. There was actually one fuck up night here in our area where we are in Germany, and they opened up a restaurant. And so they sold food to people, and they had they were telling like, okay, we had this avocado dip, avocado sauce, which actually was very well well sold because people really liked it. And they were like, oh, and so one year they actually saw that they got into financial trouble. So they were like, okay, let's double down on this avocado sauce, because if this sells good, we actually might be fine. So they started to sell this avocado sauce in online stores, on markets, in the streets. They went out and put this into retailers. So for example, you could go to the supermarket and you could actually buy this avocado sauce. The problem was they did not actually calculate the unit economics, and they miscalculated, and they lost 20 cents, only 20 cents on each and every portion of this sauce sold. So the more of this product they actually sold, the more the more cost accumulated, and they could not keep up. So they actually ruined their own business by selling a product too cheap. And this is only one example of many I heard. So when you always look from the top, like in general, what is the money coming in, what's the money going out, you might miss these little details. So my recommendation is always go into the details first and define one unit, because then you can break everything down and you can see which kind of product or which kind of pricing, for example, is actually suitable for my business, so that you won't be yourself standing on stage at a fuck up night and telling people, we did not get the numbers right. Okay. Any questions so far on I don't know, margins, customer acquisition, or unit economics from your part? Oh yeah, okay. So first Stefanos and then Maria.
So you said that margin is actually the money you made from one product sold, right?
Yes.
And in contrast to that, the revenue is the total income of a company.
Yes. So let's we can go back quickly. We can specify on that. So so profit is the overall result in the company itself. The margin always goes down to the product, and you can break it even down further when you are like, okay, the product is our unit, so the margin is always like, you can actually this can actually be like we make 40 cents on margin on one sold pen, or you can actually be like, okay, this is our margin is 40%, because then you can see how we can raise the margin, because the total revenue actually is way too abstract, it's way too global to be specific on the margin on one product. Does this answer your question, Stefanos? Sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Maria.
Yeah, thank you, Niels. While I was listening to this example with the avocado sauce, I had a question in my mind. Is it better to overestimate the unit cost?
Yes. Is it better to overestimate the unit cost? So yeah. The question is basically how much room for error do you want to have, right? So basically, yeah, might be. So because when you don't know, then you have to assume. So, and then it's always better to overestimate than underestimate. The cost for product are basically quite good to be calculated. For example, like an avocado sauce, you buy this in, you have the ingredients. Basically, when I remember right, they actually left out some costs along the supply chain, but I don't remember don't remember so precisely. So yeah, when in doubt, be more cautious with the money, right? And so it's always better to overestimate the unit cost, because what is the result when you are like, okay, oh, our costs of product are actually lower than we expected, then your unit economics get better, because the margin you make on each and every sold product actually increases. So this is the better scenario. So when in doubt, better overestimate than underestimate. Yes.
Yes, and I have another question.
Yeah, of course.
When you define the unit, sometimes the unit could have like several components. I'm thinking on something like a glucometer that you buy at the chemist. So you buy the glucometer, the device, but then you need to buy electrodes or a kit to use it. So then the unit is the device plus the kit plus the electrodes that need to be replaced. You buy the glucometer with 10 electrodes, but you use it 10 times. But then you can keep the same hardware, and but you need to replace the electrodes, another set of electrodes. Is it clear? I mean, you buy it with, they sell it with 10 electrodes for 10 times, but then you can keep the same software for 100 times, but then you will be buying supplies for the hardware, for that. Or yes, a solution with a kit that has few drops, and you need to use 3-4 drops every time, but then you will have to buy again the bottle with the drops.
Yeah.
But you keep the same unit, the same hardware.
Yes.
So how do you define the unit here? The whole lot, or?
Yeah, I think I got it. Okay, there are two. Okay, wait. I have to let me quick think, because there are two levels to answer your question. The first level is, so to keep it easy, I would always get back to defining a unit by the case that I can sell this product. So for example, when I can sell this product without electrodes, for example, which might not be possible because then it's useless, I assume. So this would be the smallest unit I can actually sell, which is working. So the smallest working unit, the smallest working product is the unit. When you have to actually when you actually sell it, but then after a time, like in a car, you have to switch parts, or you have to run a new software on that. This actually adds up to the cost for the product. So you have now to decide, is this actually included in the product cost? For example, like, oh, we assume that we have to change parts every 18 months. Then you have to be like, okay, do we actually add this to the cost, or do we make something like a maintenance contract or something like this, that our customers will receive the new compounds of the product every 18 months, for example. So I would stick to to summarize this. The unit is always the smallest working and sellable product. And if you have to maintain the product for your customer, you could actually, one, add this to the cost of your product, and have to assume, like, okay, how many times do we need this to change or to renew in the lifetime of this actual customer? Or on the other hand, you could say, we make therefore a subscription model out of this, and this will cover the cost for new compounds we have to send to the customer. Did I get this right? And does this answer your question, Maria?
Well, I have to think about what is getting complicated.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
Yes, well, I'll think about it, and if I have more questions during this course, I'll ask you, or I'll write you an email, or if
of
I
course.
start doing my numbers and I don't know how to work it out, I'll ask you.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, like, we are still on this whole theoretical part. So when we go into the spreadsheet after a lunch break, I assume, then we can actually cover these questions more precisely. But it's always, when you're working with products consisting of different components, it's always getting a little bit harder to actually define a unit. But at the end of the day, the most basic requirement for a unit is this can be sold, so if it has to be something like a standalone version which can actually be sold, but because otherwise a unit does not make sense. Okay, but we can come back to this question later. And what Dina wrote is learning about our failures is even more important than being prepared to succeed. And this is definitely right. We always encourage our founders we work with to actually be very precise on their assumptions. We actually can be quite annoying with that, because we always ask, like, okay, why do you think this is going to happen? How do you want to acquire this? What are the performance indicators you actually want to have? Because when people are like, yeah, and then we spend 10,000 euros on advertising, and then we get 100 customers. They're like, okay, on which channel do you want to do this? How much money do you want to spend on one customer? And they were like, okay, we don't know. Yeah, you don't know because you did not do it yet, but you have to make an assumption. You have to make a calculation on how could this actually work, because only then you will be able to process what you learned along the way. And this is the key of learning in out of failure, because you always have to come back to what actually did not work and what did we assume. And bringing these parts together, this is actually where you learn and where you make progress in developing your business. Okay, so so far, if you have questions later on any topic we talked about, we can cover them also later. I would like to proceed with one further topic, which is very tightly connected to the financial planning, which is markets. When you are looking on markets in every pitch deck, and you might have created one, in every pitch deck you have a slide for the market outreach, for, okay, how big is the market we are in? How does this work? How much money do people spend on all this stuff? So you have to estimate markets, and markets are, and this is a very, very good example why this whole thing we are talking about is not exactly rocket science, because the definition of markets is actually not that precise, because markets could be the overall market, like the stock market, for example, like how is the world economy doing overall. But markets could also be something very small. For example, coming back to our example with a lawyer, when you're like, okay, I'm specializing on couples getting a divorce, then you can see, like, okay, how many couples are in my area and how many couples will get a divorce, and are these enough people to maintain a business? So is this market in my area big enough? Are there enough cases of divorce? Which might sound like okay, it's not pleasant, but actually this is a market. So this could be also defined as a market. So one of the other tasks we will have as entrepreneurs is we have to define what our markets are. So what is the economic environment we are operating in? And when you look at the startup space, you will find that there are two approaches which are made. And the one is a so-called bottom-up approach, and the other one is a so-called top-down approach. And I will cover both of them because this makes some things hopefully a little bit more clear when you are going to plan and you going to assume or making your assumptions about the market. And you could see like we prefer the bottom-up approach, and I will tell you why. So you might know this model of TAM, SAM, and SOM, which is actually a way to describe a market. So we actually do three things. We divide the overall market in three categories. The first thing is it's the total available market, like the big one overall estimation. How big is this market in general, maybe global? In the next step, we are breaking this down to what is actually for us a serviceable, addressable market. Also, which parts of the market are we actually able to address with our product? And the third one is the serviceable, so-called obtainable market. Obtainable means basically what is realistically for us, what's a realistic assumption for us to be able to do in the next couple of months or years, because no company is actually able to get on a global scale at day one, right? So you have to start somewhere. And the starting point is the obtainable market. And what we often see in pitch decks is, oh, we have a 315 billion worldwide market. We have a 15 billion market in Germany, and we have a $125 market in our region. Let's make this clear by putting up an example. Let's say we are doing a let's say we are doing what can we do? Let's say we provide a product for the construction of electric vehicles. Let's say we produce batteries, just to be simple in this regard. So we could say, okay, we can produce batteries and we can sell this to people, so to other companies who actually build cars. So we can start by, we have to make contracts, and we have to actually be able to produce enough batteries to actually satisfy our customers. So when we just started the production, it would not make any sense to actually acquire a customer, for example, like VW, Mustang, and BYD from China, because we are not able to produce this mass of batteries. So we have to break it down a bit, and we have to make assumption. Okay, what can we actually cover in the next couple of years with the rising production resources we might have. So yeah, this is basically the model which many startups do, and they do it because they learned this from other startups, especially from the successful ones. You find these kind of slides in every pitch deck, from Airbnb, Klarna, N26, you name it. Name any successful startup with a high valuation, and you will see like they were going this approach, like this is the TAM, SAM, and SOM model. The problem here is that this is a visualization for the market, which is especially suited for high-scale products which have their own market niche. For example, when you look at startups, for example, like Instagram. Yes, Instagram was one of the first platforms doing this picture sharing. So they were actually going and aiming for this high-scale product. And so this is a strategic decision, like how fast can we scale? This TAM, SAM, SOM model is basically the one you find in the usual venture capital case. High scale, big markets, few competition, so we want to scale high. The potential here, so the total available market is the most important thing here, because this says, can our company be worth a lot of money? Like you know the term unicorn, like can we can we get with this market to a valuation of $1 billion US dollars or euro. So this is basically what this slide would show. Like, oh, this is a very important market, and we can conquer this. What happens often is, for example, when we had one startup who were actually selling a product to dentists. So they actually were like, oh, look, we have a software and hardware component, and we looked in how many dentists are in Germany, how many dentists are in Europe, and how many dentists are worldwide. This would be a very interesting approach, but the problem is actually this strategy does not tell me anything. How do we actually get your product to a dentist based in Australia or based in Namibia or in Chile or you name it? So this does not actually tell me how the strategy will actually work. And the other problem is maybe the other countries are not suitable for this product because of other restrictions, other or totally different healthcare systems. So when you sell a product into, for example, like an European healthcare system, which are most of the time partly covered by government, you actually have, in many countries here in Europe, you have more or less free healthcare. It is a whole other story when you go to, for example, like the American market, where you have a different kind of business model to cover this, because insurances work totally different there. So this model has the weakness that this is not telling us something about how do we want to do this, which is only suitable for products which can be rolled out in nearly every country and nearly every person under somewhat similar circumstances. You might know, and I'm sorry that I'm coming up with Netflix again, but this is a good example because Netflix only has to change the availability of some movies and they have to change the prices. So for example, like a subscription in Vietnam is actually way more cheap than in Europe, but the things you can actually watch are quite the same. So these are very similar circumstances for Netflix. On the other hand, when you sell a product to European industries and you have like norms and your regulations and the whole production line is working in a specific way, this could be very different from for other countries. So you always have this information gap within the model, and therefore it's always hard to read the strategy out of this kind of slide. It's actually useful to show the potential, but you won't come to the conclusion. And remember, we want to work with drivers. So we want to see what drives revenue. And you could just only, in most cases, for most startups, you don't just like increase the money you spend on marketing to get to other countries. You have to do things. You have to build a network. You have to do really hard work to get into other countries. You have to maybe pay for consultants who help you to get a foot into the market. So this is oftentimes way more complicated. And so when we want to apply the driver model, we need to have the strategy laid out on how and what do we have to spend here. And this actually is a very quick approach to assume, okay, what does the market look like? But it does not tell anybody on how we want to get into these markets. Nevertheless, these things we do in a pitch deck, for example, like showing the markets or the potential in other countries, for example. I mean, we do this also for other people who want to work with us, but we also do it for us, for ourselves, because this is the way we can do analytics and apply data to our business plans. So we always want to look at, okay, what could be, what do we have to invest in the drivers, so in sales and marketing, to actually get into the market, to actually acquire customers, and how much money will that cost, and how do we sustain this kind of revenue? And so This approach actually is not suitable for these kind of analytic work, and therefore we actually suggest another approach, which is way more downgraded and way more bottom up. Did you ever maybe you heard of the term bootstrapping? So bootstrapping actually means that you build the business mostly on earned revenue. Like, you don't require huge amounts of money to actually get everything running, but you can actually you very early start to sell products to customers. Either way, the product you actually produced, or the hardware, or the components you actually produce, or you try to first of all sell, for example, your know-how in the form of consulting. This actually can be very useful to actually acquire customers, and this is called bootstrapping. Like, from day one, we try to sell something to our customers, and this results in a more bottom-up approach. The bottom-up approach is actually quite similar. You see here, like, we have two of these bubbles. We have a so-called primary market, and we have an expansion market. So, for example, let's get back to our example with the dentist. We have a product and a software for dentists. So how could we actually proceed to sell this to potential clients? Yeah, we can actually call dentists, we can go there, we can go to events or conventions, especially for dentists. We can do ads in specific media for this target group. So, and then we can say, like, okay, with our effort and our resources, we might be able to acquire 100 customers in the end of next year, because we have to do everything ourselves, because we are only the core team of founders. But our primary market is defined by how many people can we reach out to, and the second thing is, how many products can we actually produce? Because no company is overselling is a point. So everybody knows the story that Bill Gates sold the first version of Microsoft before it was actually produced. Yeah, this was a risky move, and startups do this all the time. Like, oh yeah, we can definitely do this, and we deliver in 3 months, and now we have to work night shifts because we have to do this. So this is somewhat part of the business, but you have to be realistic. And how many hours, products, projects you can actually cover with your operation, with your sustainers, you know what I mean? So, like, we have to go there and be like, okay, what's our primary market, which can actually be defined by limitations of our supply chain, our production capacity, the region we are working in, the languages we can speak. So these are all limiting factors which can help us define our primary market. To give some advice here, it's always good to start at the own front door. So through the network you build up during such a project, or with friends, family, and co-workers from university or other projects. This is where you actually get into a business network. So this is our go-to-market strategy. The go-to-market strategy is nothing more than how do we do the first sales. This is always a very, very interesting and a high tension part of the startup journey, because when you go out there with a product, you're actually putting things to the test. Maybe one side note here, what we often hear is, like, when we talk to founders and they're working on the product, right? So they actually are doing development, they're doing testings, and we always ask, okay, well, do you know what your clients or potential clients say to your product? And we're like, we are not ready yet to talk with customers because the product is not finished. And this is one mistake which leads to fuck up stages, because it's never too early to talk to customers. the earlier you get into the dialogue with customers, the better you are. We actually try to do this ourselves. We always talk with our customers, our clients, about new things, new tools we want to develop to help them build their business. And because we cannot afford to just like I cannot afford to sit in my office and do things the whole day and develop, for example, like, I don't know, maybe a new e-learning, and no one's actually wanting that. So I always try to be ahead and be like, okay, we talk to our customers and we know what they want, and now it's actually useful to spend the time to create the product in the first place. So the primary market is what we can do by foot, like step by step. So the question is always, what can be done with limited resources? And for most startups is that. And this is why I included this into our workshop here, because limited resources are always a problem for startups. There are maybe 1% of every company in the world which has enough money. So this feeling of we have enough money when we started it. So I'm talking about startups. I'm not talking about corporates and enterprises. I'm just talking about startups. Most startups have to struggle with limited resources because they cannot find funds or grants which are actually financing the whole operation for 10 years, which is not happening. So you always have to be aware of what can we do with limited resources. And therefore, financial planning is actually very important, because you need to be aware of the cost and the money you can actually spend, or time and money you can actually spend on drivers, means marketing and sales. But when you figured out, okay, when we have the first customers and when we get this whole operation running, you need to apply these resources to get into the next stage. And the next stage is the so-called expansion market. For example, you can get to another region, you can hire new people, you can get more clients in, you can sell to different industries, and so on and so on. So the expansion market is always like, okay, we tested this in a very small sample size and we got our first 5, 10, maybe 50 customers, and then we know how these things are working. Now we know, how do we sell the software? How do we sell the product? How do we do marketing? So this whole primary market thing is about learning in iterations, making assumptions, spending some money, making some revenue, and so forth and so on, and work with this limited resources. As soon as you are quite sure of, okay, now I think we see what our customer acquisition costs are. Now we see how our unit economics work out. Now we are way more safe to spend more money to reach new clients, to expand our operation, hire new people, and so on and so on. And then you go to this expansion phase. These are the first couple of years. Depending on the business model, you will spend about 12 to maybe 40 months in primary and expansion markets. After that, you are actually developing into a company which has more staff, more operation, and you have more predictable outcomes in what you're actually doing. Okay. Do you have any questions on markets? Okay. Seems not to be the case. Okay. So yeah, I know I talked for about 90 minutes and a little bit more now. I wanted to cover all the basic concepts in one session, and hopefully this. So yeah, you will get the slides afterwards, so you always can look back at this, which is not a problem. So if you do not have any questions right now on this, you can just like let this sink in a bit. We can come back to this part of our workshop anytime. So do you have, so we have some minutes left. Do you have any further questions or topics? Maybe you have some suggestions. what do you have in mind, what we should cover in the next part of our session. So I would like to give you a quick moment to think about that, and you can use microphone or chat to give some hints, or you can make a wish what we should talk about. Just checking if I covered everything. Yes. Liv has raised her virtual hand. Please.
Yes. Thanks a lot for your webinar. Just because you just mentioned, okay, is there any more question about market? My doubt is more about, okay, if I'm building up my market strategy, let's say for my business, probably it should be based on the market studied, right, which I did before or something like that, because it's not because you should know, okay, where actually I will find my customers, and somehow, okay, how can I build up this market strategy really linked to my business?
Yes, I can definitely say yes to this. And therefore, it is so important to talk to your potential customers, because when you are doing market research, you can do this in two ways. You can actually make some research on available data on the internet. You can look into reports of companies and so on, where you have like this global data set, and you can make assumptions from that. But on the other hand, if you are talking to companies actually, or to potential customers, you will learn about their specific problems. And these two data points combined make up the database for your market assumptions. For example, when you're like, hey, for example, we know that some kind of because I know the space better than other spaces. Let's say we go into IT security, and we see statistically a rising increase in ransomware attacks on companies. So 30% risen in the last year. So this is the global data. And then we go to companies and like, hey, have you fell victim to a ransomware attack? Did you have account takeovers? Did you get hacked? Then they will actually talk to us, and they were like, yeah, no, not. And you can see like how worried are these customers. And when you do some interviews, you will see like, okay, so we have the statistically increase in ransomware attacks, and we have in some branches, in some industries, we have awareness because we actually talk to these people. So we can say that this kind of company in this industry is a perfect primary market target, because they not only are more likely to suffer from ransomware attacks, but they also are more aware than other companies. So this is where we start our go-to-market strategy. And this is how actually you combine this kind of data to combine research with interviews, which is actually also some kind of research, but you know what I mean, like global data and specific customer interviews. And there you can see like where is our product needed, where is this kind of, you could say, sweet spot where people maybe are looking for a solution to a specific problem, or where this problem is more costly than in other industries. These are interesting things. For example, like when you are providing a specific product which is, I don't know, benefiting for different industries, you might find that some industries have a bigger advantage by using your product, because maybe their own margins will increase by using your product, or their production time will decrease, and so they are faster, and so on. And so you always have to figure out with your customers, where is our product most useful, because there it is more easy to actually sell the product, especially when you go business to business and not business to customer.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so yeah, Yeah, you're welcome, Basil. An eco-industrial park. Okay, this sounds interesting. Yeah, and the bottom-up project. Yep, I'm so glad this helped. Actually, guys, I mean, like we have 10 minutes up until the break. I'm very thankful that that you actually seem to be benefiting from what I'm told, because I was thinking like, okay, is this too basic? Is this actually fitting your needs? I was not sure of that, because and so I was like, okay, just like give it a try. How would I approach this? And yeah, I'm very happy about these kind of messages. Yeah, let's. I would suggest the following. Maybe we get now into our break, because the next step would be that we have a look at the financial model, and with the financial model we can actually fool around a bit. So you can look at your emails. You will find there the financial model. I modified it for this specific workshop. So you find some random numbers in there. You can just erase them, but we will have a look into this spreadsheet that you have some orientation, and after that you can actually fool around with that a bit, and you can see how things are changing, and maybe this helps you to apply some things to your own financial model. But I would prefer to start with the financial model itself after the break, if everyone is fine with that. Yeah, as promised, I would like to go over a spreadsheet and show you just like how it works. We won't get into every single detail, but I want to give you roughly an overview of how is it constructed and how it operates. And from there, you can actually start, trying out some things and make some calculations, or even look into the formulas and implement some in your own spreadsheets. I can tell, since I've become a founder of a company myself, I've never had to do much things with Excel, but this actually changed a lot. And so here we go. This is the right one, I guess. Here we are. So, okay. So now you should see my screen and the Excel sheet. So as I mentioned, there are some numbers throwing in, because I was just like testing out that this actually worked. It's a little bit of a shorter version. But usually you can just like extend these kind of spreadsheets as hell. You can put so many things in that. So I want to stick to the basis, stick to the things we covered, and to show you how you can actually do an approach in an Excel sheet. So, so the file is working like this. You have different parts of the Excel spreadsheet. So first of all, we have the profile. Then we have, so where in the profile there are some, there's the place where you can make assumptions, and where you can actually define some things which represents your company as with a profile, or your project with a profile. We will get to this later. Then next up we have the overview. The overview is maybe a little bit more complex, as you can see. So basically, in the overview is the second most important thing, because here we are later on getting some numbers into the system. Then we have the products and services, which is actually quite neat and quite slim. So here you can actually define the products where the Excel spreadsheet is taking some numbers off. And now you have the 3 years. So this plan goes 3 years. We only stick to year 1, where you actually have the predicted or the measurable revenue and the measurable sales. And in the end, you have 3 years, and yeah, I put in some graphs for just like visualization, because it's always comes in handy when you have some graphs where you actually can see things, how things develop, because numbers are one thing, but when you actually can see things adding up, where you have the different things. And as you can see here, you will be able to see things like the development of the customer acquisition cost over 3 years, and you have the unit economics, although about 3 years. And so yeah, let's get started. As usual, if you have any questions, please let me know let me know in the chat, or yeah, we will continue. So let's start with the profile. So the idea behind this was that we can do actually a step-by-step approach. So actually, you can fill in mostly every field which is actually has some kind of which has a format like this. You can actually, or you should, add some things to this. So we can start with our test company, and we can run through this. So first of all, we go into the company vertical. First of all, a vertical means like what kind of product are you selling? So here we added a little drop-down menu. So for example, we can say, okay, we want our test company is a tech startup and we are selling hardware. The kind of product is, of course, then a physical product, and our business model is B2B. We also have so business to business, business to customer, and business to enterprise, and we have business to administration, which in some sort of fashion can also be a very viable business model, but this makes it more clear. So if you don't know yet how your business model will be, always view everything you can just like not verify yet as an assumption. So here you can add your business case here just in a quick sentence, so that when someone else is actually opening your spreadsheet file, they have actually a very precise overview of what you're doing. And so after that, we can go through the 3 years which we want to define what we are actually doing. So for example, let's say year 1 is the current year, year 2 would be 2024, and year 3 is 2025. So far so simple. So now we actually want to define, okay, we have, for example, like we have differentiated in project and product. So for example, in our case, it could be that we are like we are selling a hardware product which is actually paid monthly, for example, like this is the accounting period. So we have a subscription model which is actually coming in monthly from our clients, and part of our business case is that we actually do some projects to, first of all, maybe consult with our potential clients, and they pay for projects which they do one time, and this is only direct sale. So then we can define, for example, like customer segments. Can we classify a PPP with government that deals on real estate to industrials as B2B or B2C? Okay, this question I will pick up immediately. With government that deals on real estate to industrialists as B2B. Okay, so the question is if this would be a business case B2B or B2C, right? Yeah, okay. So yeah, when you combine different business models, basically, I would always recommend putting your main business case in here. In most cases, you only have resources for one business case. This could actually change. Then, of course, you can just like add another business model here. So we wanted to keep it simple, so we specify on one. In the case when you have projects with the government, for example, who are actually dealing with real estate to industry, that would be actually a B2B case, because a business case, a business model from the get-go is always defined by who is the final customer. For example, like when I'm working together with other companies to sell to administration, this would be a B2A case, regardless if we have some other company involved in that. We can do this. We can specify for B2B or B2C, but as you will see, this is not the most crucial point here. So this is only for information. So this, if there are any questions on B2B or B2C, we can pick them up later. So we first of all, and we also can specify customer segments. For example, we can say, okay, we sell our product to universities. I can just like add, okay, this is something more like a B2A, and I can say automotive industry and for example, like IoT production services or something like this. So, okay. And then I can actually estimate my revenue. So this profile is basically more like a collection of assumptions. So when you start off with your business model, you assume maybe you're like a B2B or B2C. Sometimes you have to pivot. So these are all assumptions. And for example, like we can estimate revenues. For example, like when we say like, okay, we go with 50,000 for a year for universities, but we want to focus on automotive industry, and maybe we have a project inside with an IoT production company. So this would be like our estimation. We can also add some scientific grants. For example, when you have a cooperation with the university, which includes a grant, or for example, in Germany, there are some grants you can apply to if you fund a new business. So this is what would put up here. And now we can actually assume our costs, like the monthly costs are getting here, and we have actually the sum in 1 year. So we can actually assume like what we assume should be paid or should be spent on sales and marketing. And we say like, I don't know, like 15,000. And the accounting period, we say, okay, just like we don't know when we want to spend it, but just like over the year, this would be all right. And so we can go through all of this, and we can repeat this for each year, as you can see. And in the end, we can assume like how will our years end. So totally fine when these assumptions are very rough, because as you can see, we only give some, we enter some numbers in, which we first of all assume, and to come back to this later to actually validate if our suggestions or our assumptions were actually right. So this is basically the profile. Later on, for example, when you are 1 or 2 years in business, you can exchange these numbers with the real numbers, of course. But as you will see when you use this, the profile gets less and less important, because you will be working on other slides of the Excel spreadsheet. For example, like the overview. So to continue our little rundown, you will see here different fields. In the upper left corner, you have the maintainers, trainers, and drivers. So here are the maintainers, here are the trainers, and here are the drivers. And you will see here, like here are the here we find the results of each and every year. So we have you have like the result of each year, and this model also spits out what do we have like in revenue, or do we actually running out of cash. To get to this, we will first focus on the drivers, because these are the most important things, right? So here you can actually define what kind of marketing and sales spendings you want to have. So you see here in year one, you have different items you can select, like ads, material, outsourcing, for example, when you're hiring an agency, advertisement, conventions, and events. And you can plan your costs, like, okay, we plan 200 euros, or let's say we have a little bit more. We want to assume we spend 2,000 euros in year one in ads, and we know we have some conventions to attend. We want to outsource a little bit, a few things, but this comes in cheap. And advertisement, and let's say we have some cost for material, like, for example, I don't know, business cards or something. This can all go in here. Advertisement we leave out. And so this actually gives us here the planned cost over the year. So we can see in the first year alone, when we spend this much money a month, then we will end up in 54,000 euro only in year one, which might be a little bit high, but only for exercise purposes. This is how you can actually plan your costs in marketing and sales. So this is where you can, first of all, get an overview on how much this will actually cost you. Later on, we will see how this actually plays out. But first of all, here are the drivers, which is fairly simple because we only need to select the item and we plan our monthly cost. Important is that we stick to the monthly basis, because in the first period of your business, it's always important to have enough money in the bank, right? So the base on monthly costs is actually quite important, because sometimes you have the issue that, for example, for a project, the invoice is pending, money is not yet transferred to your bank account, so you're waiting for that. Especially, for example, when you are selling to B2C, so when you're direct to customer business, and you, for example, you spend money on and marketing campaigns, but you offer 1 or 2 months for free. Then you spend the money on now, so for example, like in June, but every customer you get will have 2 months free of use, and only in September or August, the earliest, will be money transferred to your bank account. So you always have to keep in mind that overall, over 1 year, yes, this should be a balance between revenue and cost, but this is also true on a monthly basis, because you don't want to run out of cash. This is one of the most important tasks you have as a CEO. Never run out of money. This is so important, because you have to keep an eye on cost and revenue, investment and spending. So I highly recommend breaking down everything to a monthly basis, because then you can make estimations. So here are our drivers, and now we go to a little bit more complex stuff, the maintainers. So the maintainers are basically our personnel. We have software licenses. We have, for example, rent for office, hardware and material, depending on what your business case would be like. So let's say, okay, these are many people. So let's say we cut it down a bit, and let's say, okay, we have the employees, and let's say, okay, we have 2 positions in management. Let's say these are the 2 founders, and we have 1 employee in sales. We have 1 employee in the office, and we want to employ one person for research and development. And so here you can see you have the year 1 salaries, which are here, the year 2 salaries, and the year 3 salaries. So why are these looking different? As you can see, like, because they are different format, because we want to set the salaries for the first year. Let's say we have someone in the office with 2,400 euros, and R&D may be somewhat more expensive. So this is our payroll for the first year. And afterwards, we can say, okay, we want to, for example, like raise the salaries, or we can actually say, no, we don't want to raise the salaries. We put this down here, so you can just like and as you can see, when I switch here, the cash out and the cash out here actually differs, because the Excel sheet is pulling the numbers from here. So you can see like how would the salaries be progressing if we say, okay, in the first year, for example, our sales manager is actually earning 3,300 euro, but if he or she does a good job, we were like, okay, we want to increase your salary in the year 2 about 15%, and then you can see directly what this means to your payroll. Although when we are adding new employees, for example, like we know we want to hire someone for example, product design. In year 1, we have actually, there's no one there, no one home, but we want to actually hire someone here. Then we can actually make this happen in that way. So you can actually make a very, very rough personal planning, especially regarding the monthly payroll you will have to cover. So this is how you can actually fool around with how much money should each and every one make, what happens if we as founders actually do not get paid in the first 2 years, what happens to our payroll, and what does it mean for our cash out system here. So this is the way you can actually try out and test, for example, yes, with these employees and payrolls. So I would say for the most part, when you have, for example, we differ between softwares paid by seat, for example, like when you're using Asana, which is a project management tool, and we can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 employees in the first year, then we need 5 seats, and this will cost 10 euros. So yeah, this will add up, and now we know what we will spend monthly and what would we spend in a year, in the span of a year when we increase this, as you can see. But these are the smaller ones. Maybe you need a more expensive software or hardware, but this is where you can actually put this in, or if you need offices. We also include like laboratories in the offices, just like to be office means every kind of building infrastructure you will need. But to keep it simple, we don't want to give you an overwhelming amount of different possibilities, just like everything related to infrastructure in buildings and hardware and software can go here, and you also can name these things, like, for example, like this is now not Asana, but we're, I don't know, we're using another software, which is doesn't matter, because only matters is for you that you have an overview what is actually the software you need, and what does it mean if you increase the seats, for example. And so you always can see in the sustainers here, in the maintainers is basically what do we spend on personnel, on software, and on hardware. The next one is the whole section of the drainers, which is a bit tricky, to be honest, because this is actually built for German market in the first place. But you can actually do different things. You can actually calculate your business tax, which is most of the time covered by a rate and a local rate. So, for example, in our town, for example, where we founded our company, overall you pay 3.5% business tax in Germany, but for example, in the local rate in here in Bochum, where we are, is 450%. So this adds up to to a bit of business tax, corporate tax, and income tax, especially when you're working, first of all, self-employed, because if you don't have a structure like limited, then you will have to pay income tax. You can find the information about taxes. So there are two reliable sources I would recommend. The first reliable source is a taxing accountant. So that you need someone who's actually firm with taxes, who can help you doing your bookkeeping, and who is actually preparing, for example, the financial statement in the end of every year. This is what you might actually need. So I can say we have a business consultant has a tax consultant who is actually doing the bookkeeping with me together, and he's also preparing the financial statements for the administration with us. And yeah, this is very important because he actually helps us proactively in keeping our balances, and for in especially preparing ourselves in regarding what taxes do we have to pay, for example, for our employees, what additional costs come there, for example, like health insurance, and so on and so on. So so tax consultants are very important. And the other source would be any kind of yeah, you have either a government agency, or there's something like the industrial chamber in Germany, where you can actually find the local rates. So for example, for Germany, you can just like go to the industrial chamber and you can look at this up, and you can select my company is based in this town, and then they will give you the local rate. But I have to be honest, I don't know how this is handled in, for example, in Greece or in Spain. So I feel not comfortable to give you the exact information. But these were the authorities where would I go to if I want to get this clear. But for your first estimations, I think the whole tax thing is a second step, because you actually can rely on help, maybe even from provided by your university. Many universities all over Europe offer services to founders where they actually help you with that exact issue. So there you can get the information. The next section is the whole legal aspect. So for example, that you just like can cover, like that you have the costs in mind. For example, like what does it cost to fund a company? What do I need to pay to get the contracts? Do I have something like a lawyer who is working on the contracts with me, and so on and so on? What does it cost to I don't know, to install the brand, because you have to actually protect your brand and so on. So you can put this here, so that you have like a checklist where you can see, okay, did I cover everything? For example, like, okay, foundation, contracts, legal, brand. We have some, for example, like we can say, okay, we need a taxing consultant who actually will charge us 500 for the first year. Okay, now we're fine. So our estimated legal cost will be 3,500 euro in the first year, which is more or less realistically. Yes. So these are the drainers. You can actually also add the for example, interest in here when you have convertible loans, or when you have a loan from the bank, which could also be very likely. Many startups actually work with their bank on smaller loans to actually start a company. And I can recommend that actually, because in the last two companies I founded, we always took a smaller loan from our bank to just like get everything running, to don't have to worry about the first 3 or 4 months, that we're like, okay, now here's the plan, this is how we make revenue. Please, we would like to have we raise some money to cover the cost for the first couple of months, and then you will get from the bank, you will get a plan how to pay back the loan, the credit, and that you can add here just like to be sure on that. Yes. So these are the three. So okay, maybe if there is something we couldn't cover, but which you might need, for example, let's say when we want to sell to automotive industry, maybe one of our founders has to do a certificate to be able to do consulting on a specific topic. So we could, for example, add like education costs, because we need this to actually be able to make business, and you can add a price tag as well. So these are the other costs, so which we don't know where to put in, and these are the slightly details which can differentiate from each other depending on your business model. So this is your overview, and with the maintainers or sustainers, with the drivers and the drainers, and yes. So yeah, we did not include everything. This is completely right. I cut out some parts, which is absolutely right. There are in some cases taxes or more taxes you actually need to include. For example, also when you employ people. For example, when you employ people here in Germany, you have additional costs, for example, for like health insurance or for example, like different things which actually are charged automatically. These are not included explicitly here, but yeah, but this is a good hint. We will include that. So thank you, Basil, for the hint on that part. So what else to find in the overview? You'll find here in the overview the actual overview. So yes, you can see here we have here we have summarized what we spend on maintainers, what we spend on drainers, and what kind of money do we put in the drivers, especially, or in this case, marketing and sales. So, and then you find here is our cash out, which is actually the result of all the above, and you find the cash in. The cash in is actually what we actually sold, right? So, but before we get into the sales and the planning year by year, I want to tell you quickly what this is. This is the runway check. Actually, what you find here is you can, for example, put out a specific date. Let's say we put the date here, and now we look in our bank account and we see we have 33,000 euros in our bank, and we have monthly recurring revenue. So this is always the average of what we make each month. And so this average is like we make roughly 10,000 euro a month. And this is our so-called burn rate. The burn rate is the sum of all costs we have, like how much cash do we spend every month, and so this is the rate we burn through our cash, right? So when you have 100,000 euro and you spend each month 10,000, you have a burn rate of 10,000 euros, and you have a runway of 10 months. So runway means the time which is needed till we running out of cash, which we want to avoid, right? Because one of our main tasks is don't run out of money, just like don't. And so you can make a check here, and you can see like, okay, so when we would have 33,000 in the bank with this monthly recurring revenue and this burn rate, we would end up in a runway of 3 months if no further business is actually possible. And you can actually make the check, for example, when you say like, okay, we want to add, for example, an investment in year 2, for example, like let's say we put this in the 5th of January in 2024, and then we estimate we will have 200,000 euros in the bank. Then we can see like how this actually differs. So you can actually see like what happens if you have the different runways. Okay, so but this is only for a quick check that you can actually estimate. And now we head over to product and services. You have space for products, but let's say we can say like, okay, we have consulting as product 1 and we have a device as product 2, and now it comes down to this is actually the unit. So consulting, we could say like, okay, we have like we sell 1 hour and we charge 150 euros for that, and our device is actually comes in 2,400 euro. And you can see like how these numbers here change. Like for example, UE stands for unit economics before we go in there, because here you can see what we actually spend in on average, and here you can see how many products sold. So where does this numbers come from? It's pretty easy. We go to year 1. And now the fun part begins, because now we have to estimate, and just let me quick zero everything out that you can see a blank sheet. So, okay. As you can see, we have now 2 named products, consulting and device. Okay, let's say we started our business in January, and in January we weren't able to actually close any deals. We're talking to customers, but it was very bland. So yeah, actually our first projects were in February, and remember our smallest unit is an hour. So let's say when we are at our customer's office one day, or in their production complex, we spent there one day, and this day will contain few hours which we can actually sell. So let's say we made a few appointments, and we were able to convince 3 customers for paying for our consulting. And let's say we were able to sell 30 days in a stretch of a few months. Let's say in February we had 15 hours, and in March there were 30 hours. In April we were down some hours because we need to close new deals. And then we had really great for example, like a really good convention. And we now know that we are talking to some customers, and we estimate that in June we'll get to 50 hours, in July a little bit less, because yeah, I mean, like holiday season, you know, and we plan to really get going in September, October, and when companies are running out of budget, they actually want to running out there, they still have budget, and we can actually make some hours. So therefore we know we are in June, right? So because today is 2nd of June, we know these are our numbers, and these are our estimated numbers based on the sales activities we actually do, or the marketing activities. And so we can actually say, okay, these will be our projects. Besides our projects, let's say we're selling also our device, and let's say, okay, we on average, 1 customer buys 4 of these products. So we can say, and we know this because we had 2 customers, 1 in March, 1 in April, who actually bought 4 devices. In May and June, we were not able to land a sale yet. So we actually want to estimate, okay, we were able, with this kind of resources we spend, that we were able to sell 4 products. When you now see, like in this kind of business model, up to June, we had like these amount of days, which are roughly 50, 90, 140, like 150 days, or 150 hours, excuse me, 150 hours, which we spent consulting at our customers, and we sold 8 devices. So maybe we could estimate if this number of hours increases because we get more customers in for consulting, we could estimate like, especially in September and October, we might be able, because we have so many more hours, might be able to maybe sell 6 units in September, 6 in October, and maybe 4 in November. And so you can see here our average in this year would be 11,000 in a month in total, but we rely heavily on our consulting hours and fewer selling devices. So this gives you some room to actually wiggle around a bit and see like how these things play out. And what I do is every month I sit down, I get into my spreadsheet, and I'm like, okay, now, for example, like now is the time where I review, for example, like the month of May. And I'm like, see, we did not have 40 hours, we have 45 hours, which is actually good. And we sold one more device to a former customer. Nice, I can update that. So we can actually, you can actually use this to make predictions in the future, and you can, and I recommend this, to update these things, because then you can actually plan, see what happens, and just like have a grasp on this. Okay, so far, these are basically fairly simple. You set the product name and the pricing on the product and services page. And here you can actually work in the number of sales you did, always depending on the smallest unit. Here we have the hours sold, and here are the number of devices sold. In this part here, you find the marketing and sales. For example, like when we are combining these numbers, we're like, okay, we know we had, for example, like 5 customers who were buying hours from us and devices, and we spent 1,000 euro on outbound. Maybe we gained 2 of that, and we did, for example, like a LinkedIn campaign, and where we spent 600 in January. We did not actually make customers, but the same campaign, for example, with 500 in February gave us 2 customers. Then you can see here you actually will find the users or the customers. Oh, I'm sorry, here's still a German word missing. I overlooked this. But yeah, and now you can see like what are the customer acquisition costs for each and every campaign. So in this example, where we actually put some money in outbound, we put some money in LinkedIn, and we spend some more money here, you actually have a customer acquisition cost of 420 euro per customer, which actually, of course, coming down because in this case, we actually cut down our spendings. The problem here is it's hard to connect the customer acquisition cost directly with the acquisition of one customer. You always have to wiggle around this, because in many cases, we don't know exactly where do customers come from. Especially when do customers come? Because especially when we, for example, have something like we have a newsletter where people can actually interact with. We have LinkedIn, we have, I don't know, Instagram, TikTok, we have sales conventions, all this stuff. We do everything at once. Then we lack overview on which activity is actually the most efficient. This is not possible within this model, because every, for example, when you are doing ads and in B2C cases, for example, ads and marketing or content creation and campaigns are most of the important drivers. You, for example, like when you're doing Instagram advertisement, so for example, like this is what we do. I can give you a quick example. We we did the following. We created 3 different kind of ad campaigns, and one was for Instagram actually, one was for LinkedIn, and the third one was actually, when I remember right, we used Facebook actually. So we were creating 3 campaigns, and we actually put 100 euros in each campaign and let these run for 1 week. And after the week, we actually compared the numbers. And these platforms give you a very, very sophisticated insight in what happened. For example, like how much time did people spend on watching the video? We made a video. So for example, we found out like, oh, okay, in LinkedIn, people tend to watch the video we posted full length, but we generated fewer clicks than on Instagram, for example, where we generated much more clicks, but the people only sticked through half of the video. So what we did was we were focusing on Instagram, cut down the video in half, that we get to the viewers. To the viewers better, that the ad matches their viewing experience, and then we see what happens next. And this is the way you actually test all these campaigns out. The topic here in the financial plan is more or less like what's the overall result, and how do these numbers actually develop over time, and what do we actually spend here? Because as you remember, we were planning in paying for ads, for example, like 2,000 euros, and now we find like, okay, we spend on LinkedIn already 600 and 500. I mean, we are way under the 2,000 euro mark. So maybe when we spend 2,000 in 1 month, and we see like, okay, there are actually customers actually generated from that, this could be actually interesting. So here's your number of sales, and so you can actually look into how many people came from which campaign. You can see when you compare these, because you have to get in the number of customers acquired, for example, by LinkedIn. We say like, okay, 25 of our customers came through LinkedIn. Yeah, when I can see this from our campaign, this actually gives me a good hint where the majority of our sales came from. Or for example, it could be outbound. So this is something you can actually have an eye on while you are going and while you're estimating your sales. Here, the results of this whole exercise is that you will actually find the unit economics. For example, so the unit economics and the customer acquisition costs. So basically, here's always the money you have to spend to acquire 1 customer, which, for example, in the month of February is 33 euros, and you find the unit economics, which are in our case not yet included the production costs, but this is actually what our unit economics would be like. And so you see when you're working with that. So you see like the unit economics increase. So the numbers get better. Prepare yourself that this would not happen from month to month, as it is in our example here. Unit economics, to figure out the real and the right pricing is a long process. And I can say, I mean, like, we have launched our product for founders 18 months ago, and we still do price experiments, because we always find something like where we can tweak something, and every time we see our numbers decline. CAC stands for customer acquisition cost, so the money you have to spend to acquire 1 customer. And this is actually what we were looking into. So we figured out like we did some campaigns, we did a landing page, we designed the whole process, and everything developed fine. And after a couple of weeks, we found like we need new campaigns, and we got better in targeting our target group. And we thought, because nice, I mean, like we make sales through our landing page, our ad campaign is working. When we get better in targeting our main target group, then revenue should go up, right? No, we actually found out we were better at targeting, but we had a harder time acquiring new customers. And believe me or not, but increasing the price was actually the solution to this. We increased the price and we made more sales. Sometimes is crazy. Sometimes sometimes you can't explain this, but it's the whole package of how is the customer. How is the customer, regardless if it's business to business or business to customer? How is the relationship between you and your customer? How is the whole experience? How does your landing page work? And so on and so on. So so these are these are the unit economics and the customer acquisition cost, which actually is quite important, because when you are getting asked like, okay, hey, can you tell me something about your customer acquisition cost? You can say, yeah, we figured out to reduce the customer acquisition cost to an average of 42 euros over the span of 12 months, for example. So you have actually the answers to many questions investors might have here in the spreadsheet. So this might be useful. What you find here is the costs, which are actually already in the overview. But for example, we put it in here because we wanted to have one. We wanted you to be able to see every month what is going in, what is going out, and you can see here like what happens, what do we spend, what do we make on revenue, and what actually happens. Do we make a profit or do we make a loss? Yes, so you always find like this financial statement in the end, and this is actually for year 2 and year 3 the same exercise. And yeah, this is basically how this model actually works. And you see it's very simplified, because for the purpose of our workshop, my thought was I want to give you something where you can actually try out stuff quite quickly, that you can say like, okay, what happens next? Because when you see the templates, for example, especially the templates you can buy online, which are sometimes really awesome, but they are really, really big and they cover a lot of things. But in the first step, when you are doing a financial planning, you want to stick to the basis, because you want to make clear assumptions about drivers, maintainers, and the drainers. You want to see how these things play out, and you want to make assumptions, and you want to test them out over the couple of months, and then you can actually here, for example, then you can add the basic results in here, and yeah, therefore you can actually see how business will or might develop. And when we go back to our plan here from our sales, when we are now in June and we know what we sold here up to June, and we estimate what we will sell in the second half of the year, we can actually keep track of that quite easily. And when we move forward in time and we see, July was a very weak month because everybody was on vacation, such a pity. Then you see like, okay, we this actually comes down to every single thing, and so you have yeah, a good overview about the key metrics: sales, marketing and customer acquisition costs, unit economics, and your total cash in and cash out. Okay, Yeah, so far to the little introduction to the model. Yeah, which I forgot. Here, for example, you see like how many products sold. So for example, like, or you could say units sold. For example, like in year 1, remember we have the consulting hour is product 1 and our device is product 2. So we can see actually how many sales did we land in the first year. And so you have always the sum of what happened during 1 year. The idea behind this is that you find every important metric within very simple spreadsheets. So I hope I hope this helps. Do you have any questions on that? Yes, Maria. I think you're still muted.
Yes, thank you. It looks really useful, but a bit complex. How long does it take to get familiarized with it?
Okay, so okay, it's a good question. So hopefully, okay, wait, I will answer the question that way. So we did this because we were talking to founders who had no financial background, and we have seen that on average, founders spend roughly 60 to 80 hours on usual business planning to get a financial plan all set. So it takes a while. In this case, we try to reduce the amount of hours down to maybe 20. So I would think when you sit down, maybe in 2 sessions on 2 days, you actually can go through this. Important is that you actually, I would recommend to really start at the front and you build it up step by step. And when you go to the overview, or when you go to the overview, you can first of all set some assumptions. I would say maybe 12 to 20 hours before you can actually say you have a 3-year plan all set and done in this Excel spreadsheet. So roughly.
Yes, well, thank you. That it looks really useful. I'm looking forward to start working on it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, you received this by mail. Sorry if you find some minor errors or mistakes. I'm sorry for that. I had the idea of giving you a simplified business model because I was thinking like we can't just like sit here for hours and talk about, oh, what are customer acquisition costs. I wanted to give you something which you can actually do something with. So maybe I rushed some parts, and but yeah, it works actually, and so yeah, you can actually try this out. Yeah.